witnesses are staying anonymous. They're terrified of threats and bullying. It's a very neutral and interesting piece.
Blake Lively is spiraling after a fearless Hollywood reporter unleashed a shocking truth bomb that exposed her publicly in ways never seen before.
Prepare for what she doesn't know they have, and again, they have a lot.
What appeared as a simple illustrated cover ended up being a savage takedown packaged in glossy print. And without question, she's faced backlash before, but this time it's clearly crossed into undeniable career-ending territory now.
Now the Hollywood Reporter has seemingly outed the two actresses' names. They're pretty much being bullied to respond.
And it all happened on the Hollywood Reporter's cover on February 22nd, a masterpiece that single-handedly tore down Blake Lively's entire act. The image was an absolute gold, showing her firing a slingshot at Justin Baldoni, because apparently we're back in medieval times where legal disputes are settled with cartoon weapons.
As TMZ's now reporting, of course witnesses are staying anonymous. They're terrified of threats and bullying. Now this smells like Blake's PR team trying to spin why they're not coming forward.
If the goal is making her look utterly ridiculous, mission accomplished, because instead of acting like an adult, Blake is now forever immortalized within a single scene.
Even if Justin was too huggy or whatever the heck, or said she was sexy, none of this warrants this. And you still have to atone for what you did.
Blake's team wasted no time throwing a tantrum, blasting the cover as sexist, because of course everything becomes sexist when you're losing. Their statement claimed the illustration leaned into negative stereotypes about women who speak out, but honestly, if a drawing is your biggest battle, maybe your case really isn't as strong as you think right now publicly.
Guys, she goes in and there's a lot of Twitter complaints, some of which, 2 or 3 of them are horrid and shouldn't be there, but some of them are spot on.
Instead of presenting real receipts, they jumped straight into the classic outrage playbook, hoping the internet would rally behind them. But now people are laughing at the sharp irony of someone who constantly preaches strong, independent women, yet proceeds to crumble over one magazine cover.
Comments that she puts in here that you're just like, why would you want to take over someone's movie? The outfits in this end are so out of touch. No, we don't want to watch bullies like Blake.
And the real kicker, the article didn't stop at the amusing artwork. It went deeper, far deeper. It spotlighted Justin Baldoni's Baha'i faith, which in the bigger picture implied this whole situation wasn't about straightforward harassment at all. Instead, it framed a narrative of cultural misunderstanding blown completely out of proportion publicly for everyone watching.
I found that incredibly telling. Hidden in a little footnote, her protection that, well, you know, I was told they were lawfully obtained. Yikes. Big yikes.
Her team's response was textbook deflection. Instead of offering real proof to support her claims, they went full attack mode against the Hollywood Reporter, acting like questioning Blake's version of events was some sort of crime. No facts, no fresh evidence, just raw, unfiltered outrage spilling everywhere.
A shred of evidence to support it. Really? Really? Really?
By bringing Baldoni's religious background into the conversation, the report steered the narrative in a way that completely undermined Blake's story. Instead of letting people assume the worst about Baldoni, it made them consider that his actions might not have been malicious at all, just misinterpreted through Hollywood's hypersensitive lens.
Just because of the way he is culturally with his religion. I want to go through some of these pieces because, hear me out, here it is. So, from the outset, the feud's been framed as the newest chapter in Hollywood's ongoing fight for gender equality.
And instead of even considering this as a valid perspective, Blake did what she does best: played the victim, ignored nuance, and stuck to the script. The problem now is the audience isn't buying it anymore. At this point, every detail of this scandal only highlights how painfully unserious Blake Lively has become. Her team's outbursts, baseless accusations, and desperate attempts to control the narrative scream damage control on steroids. But the harder they try, the worse it gets.
Before it ends with us, Baldoni wasn't afraid to interject elements of his religion on the set. He did talk about his religion a lot, says a source, on 5 Feet Apart. This had shades of Scientology, but with less of the prominence and people hovering at the times. I think that's being mean. Nothing I've done makes it anywhere near the criminal accusations and things that Scientology does.
Instead of showing she deserves the respect she demands, Blake is revealing herself as someone who simply can't handle reality. And the irony is, the more she tries to dodge scrutiny, the more she becomes it main.
Blake Lively may think they have the upper hand. Sources say she has no idea what's coming regarding her battle with Justin Baldoni.
And once the public had blind faith in Blake Lively, but that loyalty vanished the moment glaring inconsistencies appeared in her story instead of standing firm, she conveniently removed key text messages from her amended lawsuit messages that, if left in, would have completely destroyed her narrative.
Yeah, it's a little bit more pro-Blake than I think the reality is, but it is more neutral than most Hollywood trade pieces I've seen, and it brings in something much more interesting, which is this leap of faith.
This wasn't just an innocent tweak, it was a calculated move to erase the cracks in her allegations, a desperate attempt to keep the illusion alive. But instead of strengthening her case, this strategic omission only raised alarms, making it painfully clear that the truth wasn't exactly on her side.
Showing a little ankle, but not the whole leg, if you know what I mean. I'm sure she wouldn't approve of that reference, too sexist.
Media outlets wasted no time, tearing her claims apart like vultures on a carcass. Every new headline delivered another hit to her credibility, exposing her accusations as nothing more than a fragile web of selective storytelling.
She knows what they have, everything that's on the website, so she can prepare for that, but she can't prepare for what she doesn't know they have, and again, they have a lot.
The more she tried to control the narrative, the more the media showed that her legal strategy was as unstable as a house of cards in a hurricane. At this point, it's less of a case and more of a theatrical production, with Blake frantically trying to keep the spotlight where she wants it, anywhere but on the facts.
Justin kept everything. Now, why? Why would he have kept everything? That's a good question. Well, did you think he did something wrong? Or could the, interactions on set have been so uncomfortable for some, it was just because of the way he is culturally with his religion?
Legal analysts have been watching the circus unfold, and let's just say they're not impressed. Instead of presenting a solid, evidence-backed case, Blake keeps shifting her approach, like a magician pulling new tricks out of a hat. Every sudden pivot feels less like a carefully planned strategy and more like a frantic attempt to hide her own mistakes.
There's another possibility, one that has less to do with gender than it does with simple cultural misunderstandings. What if much of it, the alleged inappropriate hugging, which Blake mentioned in her new amended suit, the pre-filming praying, could be explained as a clash between a very specific faith-driven community with its unique mores and a much more modern post-Me Too one with its own set of beliefs and commandments?
The constant legal flip-flopping only makes it clearer that she's out of her depth, relying on smoke and mirrors instead of real facts. If her credibility wasn't already hanging by a thread, her erratic legal tactics are basically sawing that thread with a chainsaw.
Never worked with a male director who was so worried about everyone's emotional and mental well-being. There was an openness and emotionality to a style that was more typical of a woman, and it probably wouldn't be an issue if it was a female.
Justin Baldoni's team has been systematically dismantling every accusation with cold, hard facts, no speculation, no vague claims, just concrete evidence that directly contradicts Blake's version of events. This isn't a battle of opinions anymore, it's a straight-up reality check. And as Baldoni's receipts keep piling up, Blake's case is starting to look less like a pursuit of justice and more like a desperate bid to control the narrative.
Justin genuinely believes that if we do this, we'll work better as a group. There's a little bit of an arrogance to it. If it's like he doesn't want to acknowledge the world we live in, which is that most people don't want to do this kumbaya.
And then there's social media, where the tables have turned so quickly. Blake must have whiplash. What began as unwavering support has transformed into relentless backlash, memes, sarcastic commentary, and ruthless critiques, turning her legal drama into one massive internet punchline.
Now, Blake, allegedly, according to these sources, and there's a lot of stuff in here, whole piece is worth a read. Now, Blake has shared with friends, allegedly, that she considers this a fight that's bigger than her.
People aren't just questioning her claims anymore, they're openly mocking her every move instead of rallying behind her. The online community is dragging her narrative through the mud, making it clear that her attempt to control the conversation has completely backfired. To make matters worse, Blake's legal team pulled a last-minute stunt, filing an amended complaint just before the deadline, a move that reeks of sheer desperation.
To be remembered as the spark that ignited the next chapter of the Me Too movement. On the other side is a billionaire producer, a novice filmmaker, director, and a small Baha'i, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I think it's Baha'i employees who believe they are simply living up to the moral code of their.
Instead of clarifying anything, they padded the lawsuit with even more vague defamation claims, doubling down on portraying Baldoni as the villain in this already ridiculous drama, and in a weak attempt to strengthen her case, they added claims that other women on set felt uncomfortable, but of course provided no real details or specifics. At this point, the lawsuit is starting to read like one long, exaggerated monologue with zero substance.
The version of this for Justin Baldoni was just Michael Scott in The Office, where he's just saying inappropriate things, but not with any ill will. But Blake Lively, much more different culturally, more about the power and thinking that this is about the feminist Me Too movement. How dare you do this?
Every new twist in this spectacle of incompetence only reinforces Blake Lively's reputation as a manipulative actress who thrives on deception. The endless legal maneuvers, the obvious lack of transparency, the constant attempts to rewrite reality, it all adds up to one thing: this isn't about justice, it's about control. And no matter how much she tries to spin the story in her favor, the cracks in her performance are far too wide to ignore.
Provide any text. She doesn't tell us who these people are, just says they don't want to get involved right now given all the toxic virality out there, and that they will testify if necessary and be part of disclosures, etc., coming up, depositions, what have you.
The fact that these texts were deleted speaks volumes about the fragility of her narrative. Some of the removed messages explicitly indicate that her team exaggerated their claims far beyond what the facts could support. Instead of presenting a coherent case, Blake chose to sanitize her own records in a desperate attempt to maintain control over a story that is rapidly falling apart. These deleted messages, which Baldoni's team has already contextualized, leave no doubt that her narrative rests on shaky ground. This omission isn't a minor oversight, but a glaring red flag that undermines the entire foundation of her allegations.
First thing I noticed is, as I compared it to the last one, a lot of texts were actually removed. This is the new document, as I made a note here, but as you'll notice here, this is the original complaint. As you can see, that first text is still there, but she removed, they removed quite a few texts.
Legal experts were quick to highlight that removing such evidence was no innocent mistake, but a calculated move aimed at hiding the weaknesses in her case. They argue that the absence of these texts fuels speculation that Blake's claims are far weaker than initially presented. The very act of deleting critical evidence points to a deep-seated insecurity about the truthfulness of her allegations.
That's how lucky he is right now. We need to press on him how effing lucky. The whispering in the ear, the connotations, the JFC, other members feeling uncomfortable watching it. I mean, there's just so much.
It's as if she knows that when faced with the truth, her story would crumble into a heap of inconsistencies and outright fabrications. This maneuver, in all its clumsy audacity, further damages her reputation and reinforces the idea that she is nothing more than a desperate actress grasping at straws.
Revealed the context of these texts because they did look more nefarious, but the context, if you read the full exchange, shows that Justin's publicists are saying it doesn't even matter if it's not true.
While Blake was busy erasing inconvenient truths, Justin Baldoni's defense launched a robust counterattack. His team aggressively challenged every one of her baseless allegations, leaving no stone unturned. With a formidable legal strategy, Baldoni's camp systematically presented documented evidence, directly contradicting her claims. His lawyer, Brian Fredman, known for his aggressive litigation style, has been pivotal in dismantling the flimsy arguments put forward by Blake's team.
You really outdid yourself with this piece. That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best. Remember the removing emojis, the fact that this is all out of context? Well, they addressed that in a footnote that I found incredibly interesting.
It's a clear demonstration of legal prowess as Fredman and his team maintain that Baldoni's actions were misinterpreted rather than inappropriate, and they've presented an impressive collection of texts, calls, and emails that substantiate his version of events.
His work produced the communications to Miss Lively in a connection with a lawful subpoena, and the documents included within this complaint are attached in the format in which they were produced subject to the subpoena.
Sources close to the case reveal that Baldoni has extensive evidence, including crucial communications proving his conduct was entirely professional. Every piece of evidence stands as proof that his behavior was simply misunderstood by an overzealous team eager to create a scandal, while Blake desperately tries to blame every issue on a so-called cultural clash. Her narrative collapses under the weight of hard, incontrovertible evidence.
Lively has understood the produced documents, the text messages that were in her original complaint and are in this one. She has understood the produced documents and communications to have been lawfully obtained. That's how she understood it. They were lawfully obtained, maintained, and produced by Jones' work.
The robust defense from Baldoni's camp clearly shows that his actions were misinterpreted. Not malicious, their legal strategy centers on proving defamation and reputational harm, effectively turning the tables by revealing the broader agenda behind her claims.
Such as emojis, when available in a preserved screenshot, for example, were attached as produced. So the way I take this is, well, if those texts weren't real or they were edited, it wasn't our fault, they were Jones' work. But girl, they are your fault.
Her inability to accept different cultural expressions is as transparent as it is hypocritical, while Baldoni's affectionate demeanor, marked by warm hugs and open displays of emotion, is simply his way of connecting with people. Blake perceives any such behavior as an affront to her warped sense of decorum. Some colleagues even described his actions as caring and supportive, yet others, constrained by their own rigid expectations, found them uncomfortable.
Calling retaliation is them defending themselves against your out of context, picked and choose text messages that may have been unlawfully gotten.
Instead of considering that these differences might be perfectly normal in a diverse environment, Blake seizes on the discomfort to falsely claim misconduct. The very notion that a cultural misunderstanding could justify her outrage only highlights how little substance exists in her argument.
So I found that incredibly telling. Hidden in a little footnote, her protection that, well, you know, I was told they were lawfully obtained.
Adding insult to injury, reports reveal that Blake Lively exerted an iron grip over the production, orchestrating a power struggle that left little room for genuine creative collaboration. Far from being a collaborative force, she allegedly made multiple arbitrary demands regarding the script and filming process. Using her star power as a weapon, she forced decisions to bend to her will, micromanaging every detail as if the entire project existed solely for her benefit.
Provide any text. She doesn't tell us who these people are, just says they don't want to get involved right now, given all the toxic virality out there, and that they will testify if necessary and be part of disclosures, etc., coming up, depositions, what have you.
It's a classic display of authoritarian behavior, where control is hoarded at the expense of real productivity. The amended complaint, which she later tried to downplay, is nothing more than a desperate effort to sanitize her record, even as evidence of her tyrannical tactics becomes undeniable.
Witnesses are staying anonymous. They're terrified of threats and bullying. It's a very neutral and interesting piece.
Her legal team claims her actions were meant to create a safe work environment, yet the reality is that every decision she enforced was a calculated move to assert dominance. Baldoni's team counters this narrative by revealing how her so-called safety measures were merely a cover for her obsessive need to control every aspect of the production.
Prepare for what she doesn't know they have, and again, they have a lot.
The final version of the film bears the unmistakable mark of her interference, a series of forced changes that reflect her overbearing presence rather than any genuine concern for the crew's well-being. Instead of fostering a creative and respectful atmosphere, she turned the set into her personal dictatorship, all in a misguided attempt to rewrite the narrative in her favor.
Now the Hollywood Reporter has seemingly outed the two actresses' names. They're pretty much being bullied to respond.
The stark contrast between Baldoni's respectful, culturally enriched approach and Blake's aggressive, dictatorial behavior is undeniable. His actions, marked by genuine displays of emotion and cultural expression, were seen by some as merely unconventional.
As TMZ's now reporting, of course witnesses are staying anonymous. They're terrified of threats and bullying. Now this smells like Blake's PR team trying to spin why they're not coming forward.
Meanwhile, Blake's relentless control and arbitrary demands reveal a manipulative force determined to impose her own vision regardless of merit. Her constant need to micromanage every detail instead of working cooperatively only underscores the pettiness of her ambitions. It's as if she believes her star power entitles her to override any collaborative process, even if it means alienating everyone around her.
Even if Justin was too huggy or whatever the heck, or said she was sexy, none of this warrants this. And you still have to atone for what you did.
In a desperate attempt to shift blame from her own authoritarianism, Blake clings to the idea of a cultural clash as a shield against criticism. She claims that Baldoni's behavior, rooted in his Baha'i faith and expressed through simple acts of warmth, is being unfairly misconstrued as harassment. This shallow narrative is nothing more than a feeble attempt to hide her own aggressive tactics. Instead of admitting that her overbearing control on set was the real problem, she deflects by blaming Cultural differences, a transparent ruse to cover her self-serving agenda.
Comments that she puts in here that you're just like, why would you want to take over someone's movie? The outfits and this end are so out of touch. No, we don't want to watch bullies like Blake.
Blake Lively's portrayal of the slow dance scene is nothing more than a desperate attempt to rewrite history. She accused Justin Baldoni of adding unapproved intimate gestures during filming by leaning in, kissing her forehead, and touching her without consent, yet video evidence clearly contradicts her claims, showing her actively participating in the scene and even initiating some of the actions she now insists were forced.
Showing a little ankle, but not the whole leg, if you know what I mean. I'm sure she wouldn't approve of that reference. Too sexist.
Baldoni's team maintains that the scene was always intended to be intimate, a genuine depiction of mutual attraction rather than unwanted advances, adding fuel to the fire. The Hollywood Reporter featured an expert who, conveniently, wasn't even present on set, further undermining Blake's distorted narrative. Critics argue that her attempt to rewrite history is merely an effort to bolster her case with fabricated details, selective editing, and embarrassingly distorted facts.
There's another possibility, one that has less to do with gender than it does with simple cultural misunderstandings. What if much of it, the alleged inappropriate hugging, which Blake mentioned in her new amended suit, the pre-filming praying, could be explained as a clash between a very specific faith-driven community with its unique mores and a much more modern post-Me Too one with its own set of beliefs and commandments?
Adding further complexity to this debacle, reports suggest that Jenny Slate has allegedly filed an HR complaint against Baldoni, although the exact details of her grievance remain undisclosed. Insiders speculate that her complaint might align with Lively's claims of on-set discomfort. Some argue that her allegation supports the narrative of a hostile work environment, while others contend it's entirely unrelated to the main legal battle. If her complaint is indeed connected, it could add significant weight to an already fragile case built on shaky foundations.
So I found that incredibly telling. Hidden in a little footnote, her protection that, well, you know, I was told they were lawfully obtained.
Yet Jenny Slate's persistent silence only heightens the ambiguity, leaving everyone questioning the true extent of on-set discomfort. Her potential testimony, if it ever emerges, could be pivotal in revealing the reality behind Lively's exaggerated claims, further undermining the credibility of her entire narrative. This unresolved mystery casts a shadow over the legitimacy of her entire legal strategy.
A shred of evidence to support it. Really? Really? Really?
The controversy intensifies as Blake Lively frames this entire debacle as a feminist battle against workplace misconduct. She leans on the #MeToo movement as a shield to deflect attention from her own inconsistencies, portraying herself as a victim of a systemic problem. In stark contrast, Baldoni's team argues that his actions were grossly misinterpreted rather than inherently predatory, reflecting a natural expression of his cultural and emotional openness.
And so it was a really strange position to be in, because I felt like I don't want to just like be an actor. Like I want to have more authorship.
This clash has reignited fierce debates about gender and power dynamics in Hollywood, with some accusing Lively of exploiting a noble cause for personal gain. Critics caution that her false accusations risk undermining real victims of harassment and could set a dangerous precedent for future workplace disputes. The entire narrative is a tangled mess that only serves to obscure the truth and distort genuine discourse on consent and respect, further confusing public perception.
Yeah, it's a little bit more pro-Blake than I think the reality is, but it is more neutral than most Hollywood trade pieces I've seen, and it brings in something much more interesting, which is this leap of faith.
Blake's attempt to use the slow dance scene as evidence of impropriety is a transparent tactic meant to distract from her own shortcomings. By accusing Baldoni of unapproved intimate gestures, she not only twists what was a consensual scripted moment, but also tries to portray herself as a victim of misconduct. The fact that video evidence shows her willingly participating in the scene completely undermines her claim of non-consent.
Witnesses are staying anonymous. They're terrified of threats and bullying. It's a very neutral and interesting piece.
Baldoni's team, armed with clear and consistent evidence, maintains that the scene was intended to be intimate from the start. Furthermore, the so-called expert featured by The Hollywood Reporter is nothing more than a pawn meant to give unwarranted credibility to her narrative despite having no actual knowledge of the on-set events.
Provide any text. She doesn't tell us who these people are, just says they don't want to get involved right now, given all the toxic virality out there, and that they will testify if necessary and be part of disclosures, etc., coming up, depositions, what have you.
Moreover, the entire episode reveals a clear pattern of manipulation that undermines any claim to genuine concern for workplace ethics. Lively's insistence on portraying herself as a victim while ignoring overwhelming evidence that contradicts her story exposes her as nothing more than a master of deceit. Her fabricated narrative, supported by selective editing and misrepresentation of facts, is a desperate attempt to cling to relevance in an environment that demands accountability. So if you want to follow this train wreck closely, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we're covering this case twice a day, every day.